The host of another great mental health podcast is rejoining the show today. Izzy has his own journey to share. Catch us up from his first recording and the perspective gained he shares when he interviews other amazing mental health advocates on PSA, the podcast for mental health conscious millennials with unpopular opinions. Get ready to catch up with Izzy and new mental health tips for success. But before we bring him on, let's learn. Izzy, what do the words mental health mean to you?
Mental health means to me the study or the breakdown of how we act, think, and feel. And so when you even go even in further and more in depth with that, it's basically saying, why does Vincent think like this? Why does he act like that? Why does he feel this way about that? Everyone's mental health is different. And, most people confuse mental health with mental illness. And that's something that I like to break down on my show.
Yeah, I look forward to talking about that today too. Mental illness, mental health, very different things. Where do you listen to your podcast, Izzy? Which platform?
So this season, last season we had season 4 we added some, but season 5 was definitely dominated by a lot of visuals. So not fully visual, and still may not necessarily be for season 6, but there are definitely more visuals on _ Izzy Baker Oven on YouTube, and of course you can find me on Spotify, Apple, I Podcorn. You can find me on pretty much anywhere podcasts are streamed. Tune in and just type in P.S.A, the Mental Health Podcast, or PSA Izzy something. Any of that'll probably come up.
Those links are in the show description. Just scroll down, and thank you for sharing that, Izzy. Sharing what mental health means to you and how you podcast. It is time to talk all things mental health. Once again, my name is Vincent A. Lanci, and this is a mental health break. I am the author of the books Mental Health Week and Mr. Lanci Talks Mental Health. They are both on Amazon, and you can prime them tomorrow. To learn more about me, I am at Vincent A. Lanci on all social media, YouTube, and my website is vincentalanci.com. If it's your first time with us, each episode I sit down with a mental health advocate or professional from around the world to help you on your journey. Today's guest is returning for a welcome back episode. We'll learn his why in just a bit when it comes to mental health. My why relating to mental health came after I suffered a traumatic brain injury, and that changed everything. Before I bring Izzy on, I want to share with you that this episode is brought to you by Tampa Counseling and Wellness, dedicated to helping individuals looking to positively transform their lives through compassionate counseling and wellness coaching. If you struggle with depression, anxiety, or other mental health issues, give them a call today for a free consultation. All of their info is also in the show description. Therapy that inspires change. As I mentioned, we are bringing someone back who is shattering mental health stigma each day. If you missed his first episode, he's an advocate, teacher, and unpaid comedian. He's doing a lot more work with kids. We just talked about that before the episode started, so stay tuned. He is a human like you and I, as he puts it, who strives to improve his mental health every day. If you missed his first episode, also scroll down. You have a lot of Izzy to be catching up on between his show, this show, and his last show. Let me bring him on now. Thanks for coming back on the show, Izzy.
Thank you for having me come back. I didn't expect to come back this soon, but here we are.
Yes, we had to bring you back. I saw all the work you have going on, so we have to share it with our audience. Would you mind introducing yourself on a personal note before we dive into mental health talk?
So I'm Izzy Baker. I say it in my bio all the time, unpaid comedian, podcast host, writer extraordinaire, critical thinker, king of unpopular opinions, and this is where I'm at.
I'm excited to dive into this, Izzy. This pandemic affected us all in different ways. It's still going on in certain states. What is one thing you learned about your mental health during the pandemic?
unpopular opinion, I can't stand the news. Even though I already knew I didn't like the news is just propaganda. I can't watch that. Like, you wonder why you watch the news and you feel anxious. I tell people all the time, stop watching the news. It gives you anxiety. Stop it. And as somebody who's been free from anxiety, I have moments here and there, but free from it as far as how I used to be daily. As somebody who's been delivered from that, I refuse to go back. Anything that gives me a piece of anxiety, I flee to Satan. I'm not doing it. So
Makes a great point there. Know your triggers, know what is going to give your anxiety an increase, stay away from it. And as far as the media, unfortunately, I talk about this with my parents' generation. When they were kids, there was something called honest newscasting. If you were going to air this, it had to be facts, it had to be true. Now, as you mentioned, it's all propaganda depending on which channel you go to. It's unfortunate, but thank you for that great piece of advice. We need some more advice. What is your favorite thing to do for your mental health?
nothing. Honestly, no, seriously. I like to engulf in, like, I'm interested in a lot of different things. So like I like to engulf in whatever show I'm watching at the time, or I like to watch a lot of like um upcoming sneaker release videos, and I like to watch a lot of how to style these kind of things, and I like to watch a lot of interviews. You got to do your homework if this is the field you want to be in. So I find myself watching a lot of Breakfast Club, a lot of even some of the gossipy ones, not because my stuff is gossip related, but just because I like to watch the different styles of interviewing, from podcasting to like the roommates podcast. And of course, I'll keep up with you. And I like to watch, Dead Ass podcast. I like to watch Kevin Hart's podcast. I like to watch, even the real, just all these different styles of interviewing, so I can, subconsciously, perfect my craft, because that, ultimately is what we all want to do anyway. So.
More great advice right there. Whatever field you're in, whatever you do in your life, find the people who excel at it. Take little bits and pieces from these people and make it your own. It will help propel you in new directions. I have the great opportunity of pumping out so many of these podcasts and evolving my podcast style. When you go back, and I'm sure you can relate to this and listen to your early podcasts, trash. I look back and I'm like, wow, but you have to see the growth and appreciate the growth to get where we are now, networking with great guests like Izzy, who are going to provide value like he's doing today. You can relate to that?
Yeah, absolutely. I look at my show from the beginning, which is horrid, and I look at when I started including guest season 2, which I started to just utilize my friends, and then even for season really 2 and 3, and then season 4, of course, the pandemic, which I still think in a lot of cases was a blessing in disguise,
Yeah.
is when I was able to take advantage of stuff like this, the virtual episodes, something we never even would have thought of doing prior to COVID, and which opened the door for me to have those bigger name guests. Went from, having the people, just my friends, to the people who have the 200Ks, the 300Ks, 500Ks. Nobody with a million followers yet, but that's coming. And it's a beautiful thing. And even with, as I elevate, because season 6, season 5 has now come to a close for me, but season 6 is getting, I like to say, a facelift. I have a weird obsession with surgery. I don't want it personally, but I have a weird obsession with it. So I like to relate stuff to that. But yeah, just be prepared for that. And the guests that'll be coming on for season 6, but I still like that feeling of, yeah, I'm still doing interviews with these bigger names, but I still like doing episodes obviously by myself as well. And then also still having dialogue with friends. So.
Something I'm trying to hold myself more accountable as we head into the new year, are starting to do some solo episodes. We're coming up on 2 years next week on that entrepreneur show, and 2 years for this show a little after that. And I've always been featured with somebody. I've never sat down and spoke to the people that support me. So I'm really trying to hold myself accountable, taking your lead right there, Izzy, because I know you do a good job with that. What advice can you give anyone listening on today that's going through a tough time?
You hate to hear. I got to start off with the typical answer. It's gonna get better.
Right.
It doesn't seem like that in the moment, but it definitely will. This is. I mean, I've said it on my show before, but in August of 2021, one of my close friends, actually, he committed suicide, and we were the same age, and when you're going through those tough times, as someone who also was suicidal at one point, those voices are loud. Those demonic voices, you better off dead. You should go ahead and take yourself out. And what I want people to understand is you have to fight against that. You have to take authority over your mind. You have to fight it. Now, of course, it's gonna be times where you just may have to just relax. And again, this is not me giving tips from a professional standpoint. This is me giving tips from someone who's been through it.
Right.
Because for me, one day I remember in 2016, I woke up and I said, I'm tired of feeling this way. And so I had to take that step. And if you need to seek therapy, do that. I've done it. I've been to two different therapists. They were totally different, but loved them both. I've done the research and the homework at home, looking up stuff, watching videos. I remember personally during that time, I was going to a counselor, and I used to spend a lot of my time watching just different sermons. And and you do that, find you some inspirational videos on YouTube. Like I said, do the sermons, do a ones about how to take control of your mind. You need to do stuff like that. Some of them are a little wicked, a little bit, but still you got to find the right one that works for you, and just learning those different tips. Definitely.
Like what you said there, find one that works for you. I think that also relates to therapy, where it's not a one size fits all deal. What works for some won't work for others. The type of personality of one therapist may work for you and may not work for somebody else. Keep pushing, finding something that does work for you. Confront your feelings, like you said, recognize it's there, fight them, and push forward. It will make you stronger. And you could take Izzy as a prime example of that. He's thriving now and doing so well all around. Let's speak of that, though. What do you want to continue to do to raise awareness for the importance of mental health?
So what most people don't realize is, with the podcast, that's going to keep coming. That's not stopping. But every project that I want to create will have some form. Well, I read this book and I suggested to the people, if you want to really get to the root of a lot of things, it's a book it's by Dr. Cindy Trim. It's called The Soul Fast. Her tagline is, it's not what you're eating, it's what's eating you. It's a 40-day journey where it's not technically 40 days. I try to do it for 40 days. How she breaks it down is by weeks. So it's like, okay, you do it for Monday through Friday, the weekends you off, then do it. But I try to do it the legit 40 days. Anyway, and I do it once a year. But anyway, basically, every year is more revelation. So I think that book is good because I remember one of the questions, she asked you a lot of personal questions. And one of the questions to this that has stood out is, what is something that you love to do and could enjoy doing without money? For many years, I would always say making people laugh and being a writer. As years progressed, I end up adding and incorporating mental health. So with that, every project I create will have some type of humor. I'll be doing some writing, and it'll have something to do with mental health. It's a project I'm almost done with now, and it'll be incorporating those three things. Of course, some more than others, but in some way they'll all be there. And every project I plan to create, because I plan to do many, many things in front of and behind the camera. So I'll just say that.
Finding something you're passionate about and going with it. Look at all the great things that can be accomplished. I'm looking forward to seeing what's next for him. Make sure to throw him a follow. You're about to find out in just a little bit how to find out all his work on the internet. Izzy, I'm thanking you so much for this positive and honest testimonial you're showing. We just had someone on the mental health podcast that did another interview earlier, Margot. Her three things that she combined. She wrote a children's book on yoga, mindfulness, and cookies. That's her favorite three things. And she does this book teaching kids mindfulness and as they're baking these cookies. So I love what you're doing there. As you know, Izzy, it's normally time for the Spotlight Story with new guests, where we would look at the mental health of someone famous to let you, the listeners, know you are not alone. But on Welcome Back episodes, I would like to give you the opportunity to shout out someone else doing their part to break down mental health stigma. Who are we showing some love to today?
A celebrity or just somebody I know?
It could be someone you know. If you got somebody.
Honestly, and he gets a lot of I hope we end up being cool because I always be hyping him up. But Charlemagne the God is doing real good with, the mental health thing. And I like his spin on it. Also, Jay Barnett, He's a good friend of mine. He's been on my show before. He's been on the Breakfast Club before, but he's someone I know personally. Like I have his personal number and everything, and he's doing a good job, and he's definitely going up. Because I remember when he was kind of just doing like little local stuff, and now he's getting up there. So I guess I would give it to those two. One celebrity and one who he be with the celebrities. He ain't necessarily there yet, but he getting there. So I gotta give props. I get props for props is due.
Hey, thank you for giving them a shout out, and thank you to both of you for doing great work for the mental health community. Izzy, now let everybody know where they can find you, your podcast, the website, everything.
So my website, I start with that, is psathepodcast.com. Podcast is on Instagram. You can follow me at PSA the Mental Health Podcast. On Twitter, it's Prodigy Sportive. That's probably going to change, not going to lie. So that if I scratch the Twitter, because it is what it is. And then as far as Apple, Spotify, TuneIn, Stitcher, any of those, you just type in. Really, if you go on Google and type in PSA Podcast, I'm probably going to pop up. Not even going to hold you. And you'll see Izzy Baker. But on YouTube, _Izzy Bake Oven, because that's my podcast as well as other stuff that I'm doing. And then TikTok is _Izzy Bake Oven.
I remember talking about the first episode, how fire that handle was that you had with the Izzy Bake Oven. While you're checking out all his handles, be sure to check us out too. We're at a mental health break on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. But on Twitter, because of that character limit, we are at Podcast by Lanci. But at least you get updates from all 4 shows. I am at Vincent A. Lanci for all social media, as well as YouTube, and my website is vincentalanci.com. Mental Health Week and Mr. Lanci Talks Mental Health are both available on Amazon now. Thank you for listening, and I will see you next week on a mental health break. Izzy, thanks for stopping by once again.
All right, thank you.